So welcome to the channel, everybody. I'm sitting here with my 2007 Hyundai Tucson, and like I said, this is compatible with the 2005 to 2010 Kia Sportage and 2005 to 2009 Hyundai Tucson. So let's get right to it. First thing you want to do is jack up your vehicle. So you find your metal plate on the side up under the driver's door, and you're going to see a little metal piece that you can use to jack up the car. You're going to get it jacked up, all right, so that we can put our stands up underneath, and so that we can remove our jack and have a support system going on here. As you see, I'm putting the stands right now up under, right next to the jack, up under the front, up under the side of the Jeep, and then I'm going to also put one in the front that's more so to the driver's side than it is to the left, to the passenger side. And I'm doing that to keep it supported up while I move this jack, and I can have some room to actually start to work and get this job handled. So I'm going to go ahead and get this tire removed. So I'm using my impact wrench with a 21 millimeter socket, and that 21 millimeter socket is going to get those bolts right off. You might have to use a little WD-40 depending on the last time that your tires, the brakes, or anything has been changed or serviced. So right now I'm going to remove those lug nuts off of there, and I'm actually changing one of the sockets because I have a lug nut that's a different size. So nonetheless, all of them should be the same size. So now we're going to go ahead and get to work. We're going to go ahead and start by pulling off the brake caliper. All right, we're going to use a 14 millimeter wrench, 14 millimeter wrench, sorry. And there's going to be two bolts. There's going to be one at the top of the caliper and one at the bottom of the caliper. And the wrench that I'm using actually has a swivel in it, so that I don't have to pull it off and loosen it. Pull it off and loosen it. It's kind of like a ratchet wrench, pretty much. I'm not a car guru, not a car super aficionado, but I do have the tools to get the job done and a little bit of knowledge. So as you've seen, after I pulled that brake caliper off, I set it towards the back of the area, and then I pulled the brakes off. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and remove the brake mount. All right, this is what's holding the brakes in place. This is going to consist of a 17 millimeter socket, and I'm using my ratchet, I'm using my impact drill extension and the swivel, all right, so that I can get up under there. And as you've seen, the brake mount came right off. So as you do this, you might need to make sure you keep your WD-40 or your knock loose real close, because these parts can be kind of old. So now I'm just assembling the ABS sensor, all right, with a 10 millimeter socket and ratchet. And then seems like it was kind of stuck on there, so I'm using a flathead screwdriver to kind of pry it off. If you look at it, you can kind of see where it's where it needs to be pried, just to pull that thing right on out. And then I like to try to keep the nuts and bolts kind of inside of where they came out of, so that things don't get real confusing as I go along, and try to keep track of what I'm doing. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and remove the rotor from the axle and from the spindle, and then I'm going to use my pliers and a flathead screwdriver to pull that pin right out of that axle nut. So now we're moving now. We're gonna go ahead and spray a little WD-40 on there, use the axle nut and the socket, the 32 millimeter socket, and we're gonna pull that nut right off with the washer and keep those together, keep them real close. Next, we're gonna go ahead and I like to use these vice grips instead of using other wrenches and stuff, because it seems like it just hold a lot better. We're gonna use the vice grips to actually demount the strut from the spindle. Those two big mounts, right? Two big screws. I'm using the vice grips, and make sure that your vice grips are facing upward. That way that you can take them off and it won't get stuck while you're trying to remove it. All right, so boom, that thing is out of there. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and knock that axle, knock it in so that it can come right out. But hold up, we forgot two things. One thing, we need to go ahead and remove the ball joint nuts. So we're not gonna remove the main one at the bottom. We're gonna do the two. That way we can just pull this thing right on up. It's harder when you try to remove the bottom ball joint screw. But as you see, got it right on up out of there. And you see the two bolts right there on the ground. So now I got my other spindle in there. I went to All Star, and I think which is like a pick and pull, and I got a used spindle off of another car, and only ran me about $70-80, something like that, if that. Yeah, no, it ran me about $80, and it might be cheaper depending on where you're at. And I'm gonna go ahead and just put this new spindle right on there. All right, so as we put this new spindle on, you kind of see that it might be a little bit, might have to put a little bit of elbow grease in there, but this thing will go in. Okay. And I ended up putting a little bit of lithium grease on the inside, and I put it on the outside so that this thing can spin and rotate nice and smooth. Okay, so boom, I got the axle nut inside of there, and now I'm going to line up this top bracket with the for the strut to put those bolts right back in place. And pretty quick job. It's not going to take a lot, but it's just got to have a little bit of patience, and you might run into a couple things that don't make the job move very smooth. However, this thing is doable. So we're gonna first put these bolts back in from the ball joint, okay? And we don't want to tighten it all the way. We just want to kind of get it. We want to kind of get it to a decent tightening to where it's on there. However, you want it to still be able to move so that you can get that other bolt on there. Remember, it's two bolts for that ball joint to be held to the spindle. So as you've seen, I kind of got to loosen it up just a little bit more. Kind of got a little too tight. And then I'm going to go ahead and swing that other side into position so that I can get that bolt in there. And once I get that one in, I'll go ahead and tighten that one up, and then go back over to the left and get that one tightened as well. Like I said, you want to just kind of put a little bit of elbow grease into pushing that spindle in, and then getting everything repositioned. And then we're going to go ahead and try to get this that top mount piece pushed into the strut. That way we can add our two bolts back into the strut and get that thing more stabled. Okay. And then we're going to stabilize it with the bolts. You might need to grab a hammer. It might be a little snug. However, you get those bolts lined up. I started with the bottom. I got the bottom hole lined up, and then I just used my hammer to kind of push it in and just wiggle my way around until it wanted to actually fall into place. Okay, and then it went right in. I grabbed my nut, I put that on, and then I'm going to, and now I'm getting that thing pushed on in there, and we're getting it fitted. And I'm going to add my top bolt and top nut soon as I get that pushed in. So like I said, it just takes a little bit of maneuvering, but I'm sure you'll get it. Bam, bam, bam. Thank you, ma'am. Okay. This job was a little bit it was easier than I initially intended, but however, it does have a couple of complications. So just take it easy, be patient with yourself, and I think you'll be able to get it. So I'm getting that other nut put right at the top. I'm just working my way in and getting it to the other side. And like I told you, when it comes to these vice grips, you want to make sure that you have the vice grip set to where the little pinch part that you pinch to open up the vice grips is turned to the top. If it's not turned to the top, you will get stuck. And you have to take this, you have to use the impact wrench, and that is a 17 millimeter bolt. Is that the 19? Oh, that's the 17 millimeter bolt. And the 19, I believe the 19 millimeter bolt was for the motor mounts. Yes, for the ball joints. Oh, I'm sorry, the ball joints. And okay, you see I got it on up in there. Now I'm going to reattach the ABS sensor. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and use the 10 millimeter socket and the ratchet. And I'm actually using a deep socket, but I don't think it really actually matters. As long as you get that in there, you can use a wrench, you can use a 10 millimeter socket, doesn't really matter. But I believe after this, we're gonna go ahead and tighten that axle back to the tighten that spindle using the axle nut to get that thing back to where it needs to be, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, don't over tighten the ABS sensor either, because yeah, you don't want those problems. You don't want to over tighten anything. You don't want to use the wrong size socket for anything, because strip nuts and strip bolts, and they're the worst. You'll be there all day. All right, like I said, all right, we're adding the axle nut using the 32 millimeter axle nut socket. I'm using my impact drill to get that thing tight. But one thing about it is you have to look and see that the pin part is open, because that axle nut will cover the pin hole. So you have to make sure that you kind of just looking to tighten it a little bit before it covers that hole. And then you're going to wing that pin around. And once you wing that pin around, that's going to hold it in place. Okay. So, but adding that pin is very important. Okay. And then next, we are going to go ahead and what are we doing next? We are going to put our rotor on. Yep, that's important that you try and follow the proper steps, because if you don't, you'll be doing jobs over. All right. And so we're going to go ahead, and after we add that motor mount, after we add the rotor, we're going to add the motor mounts, and we're going to tighten those with the 17 millimeters sockets, and get that brake mount. Did I say motor mount? I meant the brake mount. Get that brake mount put back in place. All right, and from there we'll go ahead and put our brakes back on, and those brakes are going to be put on the exact same way you took them off. So you kind of want to remember what's on the front, what's on the back. That way you can keep some type of consistency going with your braking system. All right. As you see, I like to wear gloves. I'm probably one of the only mechanics that don't like to get their hands dirty, but that's because I do a lot. So I don't want to walk around with oil in my fingers and all that stuff. So try to do things the right way. And my knee pads, obviously. I want my knees to last. So let's go ahead and add that brake caliper back in there. And we're going to put those bolts right back in for that brake caliper. And we're getting close to the end, guys. And you just want to go ahead and wiggle that thing in and make sure that you got it nice and snug. But you don't want to tighten anything first before you get those bolts put into position. So you want to tighten them and make sure that they're in there, but don't tighten them to where you can't move the brake mount. All right, then we're gonna go ahead and use that 14 millimeter, goodness gracious, the 14 millimeter ratchet wrench, okay, to then go ahead and get these bolts tightened, top and the bottom, and work them in there. You don't have to be like crazy tight, but you do want to get those tight. You don't want those to go anywhere. Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and get that tie rod put back in. So I did take the tie rod off at the beginning. I didn't show that, but I did take the tie rod off at the beginning with this 17 millimeter. All right, then I just put it right back on. You don't want to hit the tie rod in. You just want to hit the actual. Metal around the hole that the tie rod in is going in. And now we're going to go ahead and replace. We're going to go ahead and put that tire back on using our ratchet wrench to tighten our 21 millimeter lug nuts back onto the car. All right, and we want to get all those on there nice and firm. A lot of people over tighten things. I don't think that it's necessary to over tighten things. What is necessary after this point is that you go back there and pull that that faceplate off of the brake, because you might get a little bit of rattling if you don't pull that faceplate off the brakes. You might think that something sounds a little off, but I guarantee you, once you pull that faceplate off of the brake or the brake rotor, you'll be good. So now we're gonna go ahead and get our car out the air, and we're gonna jack it back up a little bit over where the jack stands are, and pull those jack stands right on up out of there. Okay, so after you pull those jack stands right on up out of there, all right, you're gonna go ahead and let it back down, and your job here is going to be done. Thank you guys for watching. Like and subscribe. This is DIY Car Repair Guy.